All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the live show. I am Brooks from NoBS, joined by Adam. We're talking about culture today. We're talking about how and which cultures are allowed to exist in a couple of different ways, a couple of different contexts. This is sparked from a little bit of a debate and argument we had online. And me and Adam decided to finally hash it out. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, we go round and round about this stuff. I'm here to correct you.
Yeah, I was
Your
trying to.
incorrect assumptions about the world.
Yeah, and that's how I try to put it too. I don't want to say this is a debate. This isn't an attack or a got ya. I just think if I could get a good conversation going, I could explain to you why you're so very, very wrong.
So you wanna set up your argument first? We're talking and the intro got cut off a little bit on my end, just so you I'm on my channel, my Think Club channel. I usually do, debates, cultural stuff on my Think Club channel. I'm trying to do just art stuff on my Adam Friended channel. So, but
Okay.
yes, we're gonna talk about, I mean, and this is a good time to talk about it, I guess, with all the Black Lives Matter stuff going and,
Yeah, yeah. There's a
race
lot
is
of
top of
talk
the
about
yeah.
culture and people are tearing down statues. They're trying to delete our history. And that's why I find it particularly troublesome. So let me ask you to actually start because this kind of comes from we did a stream together a while back, and
Mhm,
I heard an interesting line in it. I don't want to misquote you or
mhm.
anything, but the basic premise was like white people don't have a culture.
Was this
White
was this the
culture.
infamous stream with, PSA Sitch and me?
Yeah, it was the last time we
Okay,
streamed, and
okay.
this came up, and this is the kind of point that we've still been talking about to this day, but, don't let me, phrase it differently or anything. Why don't you come out with a phrasing you feel comfortable with for that
Well,
premise?
I don't know that first of all, I can't speak for PSA Sitch, obviously. If you wanna talk to him, you can. I don't remember saying this. Maybe I did say it. I think PSA Sitch was saying that, white is not a culture. I don't think that white is a culture too. There are certain groups that are ethno-nationalists that are kind of a culture. So the way
Mhm.
that I'm looking at it, they're in humanity, there are nested layers of culture. So you can break them down, and I did my best just cursory because I knew we were talking about this. So I would say that, like, humans are kind of a culture. We all need water, we all need food, we all reproduce in a certain way. We all form some kind of family groups. Like,
Sure.
obviously, there's different family groups from culture to culture, but like, having babies and reproduction, all that, that's a shared culture, a human culture, let's call it. And I would say the next largest slice of culture with the most number of people contributing to it would be religions. There's Christianity, there's Islam, there's Judaism. These are the biggest of the world religions. That is a layer of culture. Below that, I would say there are nations. Nations are a layer of culture. And this is where you and I tend to go back and forth because we're talking about American culture, and you tend to be making the argument that American culture is white culture. But let me continue down my nested hierarchy of cultures.
Okay.
Below nations, there are political parties, which are a completely different type of culture. There's the Democratic Party, which is a culture. There's the progressive culture. There's the liberal culture. There's the anarcho-capitalist culture. There's the leftist culture, the commie culture. Like, I would classify them as all cultures. And then even below that, I would classify, well, some of these are nested, and some of these are overarching, overlocking. Like, you can be a member of multiple cultures at once. I would say below that is the fandom culture, and I would say the
Okay,
fandom
okay, and
culture is
I'm
probably
just
the
gonna slow you
lowest
down.
level
I
of culture.
appreciate, your attention to detail, but let's not get too far down the line. Let's just start with something simple. Do you think white culture exists?
Well, it depends upon how you classify white culture. I do
And
think
that's what gets us to the
ethno-national culture exists. I think the ethno-nationalists do
okay,
have a culture that's based on
okay.
white culture.
So let me
I
have a
I think
moment
at
here.
one time go ahead.
Yeah. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but to me, it's pretty simple, and I think it's just the kind of thing. It is a lot of semantics here. This is like a
Mhm.
semantics, like we're calling similar things different things, and I think that kind of might seem like me. That's not a cop out for me because I think it is a semantics argument, but at the underlying part and the problem is. The argument that you are on the side of, I think there's a down the line an anti-white tone to it. I think you might
Mhm,
not know it. I know you a little bit. I don't think you're a
mhm,
big. I don't think you're a racist. I don't think you're a bad
mhm.
person.
Why, thank you.
Just maybe misled, maybe wrong on some issues. But the point is, and the reason I'm so against the argument against white culture is there's an underlying tone of anti-whiteness, even if it doesn't seem overt. There's like you're trying to diminish this. And what I would ask you next is, do you think that black culture exists?
Well, it dep I no, I mean, it's the same exact thing because
Yeah. So basically,
what
with
is
your
black culture?
argument, you don't have
I
any.
asked you this.
With your argument, you're saying like you're pretty nihilist because it's just like there's no white culture, there's no black culture, there's not even like a Jewish culture or whatever Middle Eastern. You could go with a wider like religion, like because you just kind of want to break things down so much that you're basically saying if there's too many subgroups in a group, that means the larger group doesn't exist. Does it
What
sound
is
like that's something you would like? This
Can you
sounds to
answer the
me like what
question
that's
that
what
I
you're
gave?
saying.
Can you answer the question that I gave you on Twitter? Um,
Which one?
I asked you on Twitter, "What is rap culture?"
Yeah, I mean, rap is a style of music. I think it mostly
Mhm.
originated in America, part of, a large part of the African American culture.
It's
Um,
predominantly black, correct?
yeah, yeah,
But
sure,
there are white rappers.
right, right, and I understand that, but I think what you're getting lost in is like if you can point to a group and if they have a minority within their group, it doesn't mean the majority doesn't exist. You know
Well,
what I
the
mean?
reason
Like,
I brought up rap culture is because rap culture came out of America.
right.
It's an American culture. So how can you say that like a predominantly black rap culture and something like South African blacks have anything in common?
Right.
Like,
Well,
how can you
I
say
mean,
that South African blacks are black culture and rap culture is black culture when they show no similarities whatsoever? Don't you
they
think
actually have a lot in
culture is based
common.
on behavior, not on skin color?
They actually have a lot in common, though. Like, that's another
Okay.
point that we could get to, and then the other point to reverse yours is, there's white people in Africa. South Africa had large
Sure.
colonies, like,
Totally.
the Congo had colonies, like, just because there's a minority in an area doesn't mean the majority, like, loses its identity, like, China is another big example, like, we kind of say Chinese culture, even though there's a billion people there, they have a lot of states and subgroups, and some of them are speaking, like, almost totally different dialects. But the point is, you can still generalize and you can still say, hey, there's a certain culture, there's a white culture, there's a black culture, there's a brown culture. That one's probably the least used term. But that brings me back to the semantics part of this. And it's like, basically, I think what you're looking past a little bit is, for example, when we say this in America, like when we say white culture, we mean like American historical culture, which is also descendant from Europeans. Like
Uh,
it's like a catch-all term. Like when people say white in America, that's what they mean. At least in my most of my experiences, most of the things I've seen and read, like white culture is American, and since we've been historically majority white, like granted, it's not a large majority anymore, but from the beginning of our history, we were like 99% white at some point. So like, I think that's a part that I wanna hear your take on because I like
those white people hated each other, though. I'm reading a book on, Will Eisner, the cartoonist, who was Jewish, and he was hated, by the Catholics in his own neighborhood,
what does
tortured
that
every day
mean?
by these Catholic people. Well,
People within a
he's
culture can
white,
hate each
they're
other.
white, they both have the same skin color.
Yeah, but that
Uh,
doesn't
wha
change what I said.
uh,
Groups have
well,
fights within each other, like, there's black people
okay.
that fight within their groups,
So
there's
you're saying a
Hispanics.
Catholic and a Jew both share the same white culture. Like, culture loses all its meaning when you tag it to skin color. Like,
Well,
isn't
that's the
culture about
thing.
behavior?
No, not necessarily, but the thing is, like, I'm not actually like might sound like that because I'm coming from a defensive stance, but I'm not actually like saying, "Oh, this is the defining characteristic." Like it's not because they're white. I'm saying this because we just happen to be white. Like Europeans are
Mhm.
from Europe. That's the majority of the way people look. And you can't like just brush that off. Like people that look similar get along in similar ways. And if you're from the same area, yeah, you can have a different family or a different background or religion, or you could like a different sport or something. But when you have that kind of collective, like you look like me, I mean, that's like a big part of like ancient culture and like,
To some people,
tribes and stuff like that.
not really, because, I mean, even tribes would distinguish themselves further than skin color with, dress and stuff, and there have been all these studies that show that people will will team up along just arbitrary lines, like the same, eye color, wearing the same outfit. So why I don't understand how yes, there is a group of people who, uh, part of their culture is they're obsessed with whiteness. They're the ethno-nationalists. They have a culture, but I don't see how you can say all of white culture fits in that ethno-nationalist box when obviously it doesn't.
Well, no one said that.
Well, where okay, so where
You're the one that's trying to generalize like I just said white culture exists. I said that white people
Mhm,
have culture and they can have many different ones. Like it could be
okay.
American, it could be Australian, it
But
could be
how can you
South.
say American is white culture when we have 13% of our culture is black, and also those blacks are, like, freed slaves, which, like, how can you say that they're not part of the American story? Like,
I
to
didn't say
say
that.
someone who's
I
born in
didn't say that.
America
Slow down. No one
okay,
said that.
okay, so someone who's born in America, black, how can you say that they aren't any more American? They were born here, they
No
have every
one's
right to
saying
be
that,
here.
dude. No one's saying that. That's the
Okay,
thing. You're making a lot of false assumptions.
so
Like you just got to
are you s
start
so
with the point is white culture exists. And
but
there's
if
many different forms of it. Like there's many countries and there's Europe. Now there's the colonies that spread out from Europe that turn into other countries, America, Canada, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand. Like these are all white culture. It's just you're
Is
like
is America white culture? And I believe what I wanna stick to America because I don't know a lot about these other cultures. Like, I don't feel qualified to speak on New Zealand culture,
okay.
okay?
Okay, well,
So,
you could in my opinion, okay, that's a good
we're both
question.
American, let's talk about America. Is
Sure.
America white culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say America is a product of white culture. Historically, we've been majority white, especially in the beginning, especially in the early history. We were built on these principles that came from Europe, that came from places like Britain, a lot of immigrants from Germany, Spain, Italy, whichever. A lot of those people came in. They were all white. Like we're talking like 99% white in the beginning. So as far as over time, like yeah, things have changed now. We have a lot more diversity. We have a lot more mix, and that's still relatively new. I mean, it started around the '60s when the immigration stuff opened up, and we could have a more nuanced argument about recent history. But if you're talking about like the first 200 years of this country, I mean, yeah,
So we're debating over whether or not whiteness is essential to American culture, and I would say
no, we're
that's
not.
totally irrelevant, and you would say that it is.
No, no, that's not what we're
Okay.
debating. Like, yeah,
So
that's the
whiteness
thing.
is not relevant to American culture.
It is relevant. It's part of it. But what the point is, and the thing I'm arguing against from the beginning is white culture exists. Okay.
Mhm.
It's a
Which
thing.
I disagree with. I don't I like I what is white culture?
I mean, it's just descendants, usually descendants from Europe. I mean, white people originated there and now they've spread out to different countries, but descendants from Europe. I mean, that's like I was trying to tell you, like when you say white
So
people in
but
America,
aren't you saying French culture and English culture are the same then because they're both white?
no, they can be
Okay.
different.
So you're it sounds like, and I have my hierarchy here still. It sounds like you want to add to the hierarchy. I have humans, religions, nations, political parties, fandoms, and you want to add race to that hierarchy somewhere. Where do you wanna add race to? Below humans? Above religion?
I mean,
Because there are
race
plenty of
isn't.
religions that are not, ethnocentric.
Yeah, and I mean,
Christianity's not
I'm
ethnocentric.
not really focused on race. If I know I might sound like that today, but my point is to defend a group that's being maligned and saying we don't have a
Yeah,
culture.
d dude, I fucking hate
So
the
this is like a
the white
part of
race,
what's going
the
on. Like,
racist against white people, I fucking hate.
yeah,
You and
and
I
that's the
share that.
thing. Like, you
It's
don't
fucking
seem to
bullshit.
realize it, but that's what your argument is feeding into.
I don't see how though.
Like,
Like,
you're denying
the
white
these
people's
white
existence. Like, you're denying our there's a certain amount of like collectiveness. Like, we have similar morals. We have things that we've built over time. We have similar languages, like our letter system, romantic languages. Like, there's a lot of core like white people stuff that you're not getting. Like, I think
the
the problem
French
is you're just so like, and this happens to a lot of people, especially liberals who don't want to see it. It's like you're just so ingrained in the culture you can't even see it. You know what I mean?
that I can't hold on. We did a whole stream on Sunday talking about Robin DiAngelo, what a racist bitch he is against
Right.
white people.
Right.
Like, I don't understand how you think, uh, because people like Robin DiAngelo are racist fucking bitches, that somehow makes a white culture exist. Like, it's the same thing if people are racist against black people, it doesn't make every black nation on the same on the planet Earth the same culture. They're different cultures.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, I was trying to tell you about semantics earlier,
Mhm.
and I was trying to say, hey, we're saying similar things sometimes. You just don't want to say it in the way like we're trying to get each other to say something in a different way.
I'm not trying to get you to stay. I'm not try Brooks, we had you on our show. I honestly don't believe that you're a racist. I don't think that you are. I think that you are being maligned by people in a racial way that it's making you uncomfortable, and you're lashing out at that. That's what I think is going on here. Am I close? I mean, I don't wanna speak for you. You're
I
here. I
mean,
can just
there's
ask
definitely
you.
people that call me racist, like your co-host. I mean, for sure. But the
Yeah,
po-
totally.
the point today is like there's white people have a culture. I don't know, like, I'm trying to explain it a couple different ways, but just
What
because there's
cult
a
what
lot of differences and like a lot of sections and stuff, like, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, you know?
any but hold on a second. There is a culture. Let's say goth culture, okay? Is goth culture exclusively white? Does goth culture forbid black people to be a part of it? I don't think so.
Well, no one said it did, dude.
Well, then if
You have this
anyone can
weird
participate in a
idea.
culture.
Like, you just have this weird specific idea of the way things go, and like you're
Mhm.
using it to explain away ideas you don't like. You know, like, you're saying, like, I say white culture exists, and you say, "Oh, well, there's no world unified exactly the same white culture across the world." And I'm like, "Dude, I never said that. You said that."
Okay. So, but you are saying white culture exists, so I'm just trying to
Yeah,
find
it
exactly
exists,
what you mean by
obviously.
that.
American is built on white culture. Europe is still a
But
lot of white culture. Australia, New Zealand, these are all white
America
culture.
is built on multiculturalism. I know that burns your ears, but America is built on we're going to build a culture not based on skin color, not based on the language you speak, based on the ethics of America.
So, if America was built on multiculturalism, then why didn't it get multicultural until like 200 years after they started it?
Because it took the culture time to change. It took the culture time to catch up. The founding fathers set out a goal that it took time for the culture to take up and adopt, and this, American experiment has just been the unfolding of that goal. I mean, the people who came to America came here because they were fleeing religious persecution. They
Mhm.
said, "Listen, people are telling us that we can't have our individual culture." They're saying we have to be a part of their culture whether we want to or not. And they said, "We don't want that. We want to develop our own individual culture." Those
Okay,
people
but
came to
you
America and
claim
started their
America
own
was
thing.
built on multiculturalism, but we know that didn't exist hundreds of years later. So where do you get that from? Like what point or document or quote says to you that we wanted to be totally multicultural?
Well, there's always been various influxes of immigrants from around the world fleeing persecution. That's part of the American story. Those immigrants come here and they usually form their own communities.
Right,
Like
right. And I
there's
know
the
that
Asian,
happens,
like we
and I'm
have
not against
Chinatown
that.
like for a reason,
I'm not
right?
against that either. Like I'm totally for like I'm not trying to keep like this isn't about oh, let's make America white again or something stupid like
Mhm.
that. The point is, and this is what I think you're missing too. Like I saw someone on Twitter getting it wrong as well. Like I'm not trying to say it has to be white or it's about being white. I'm just saying it happens to be white. You know? It's just this
Mhm.
is what the people that came here, this is what the founding fathers were. This is where they started the colonies. It
Do you
happened.
understand though that you're excluding people when you do that?
How?
Well, you're excluding rap culture, which I would like to take,
Well, rap
credit for.
culture came like
It's, like,
200
awesome.
years later. You're
Yeah,
talking
but
about
rap culture is predominantly black,
right, but
but I
I
like to think rap culture is American.
okay, well, let me explain it to you like this. You can have a country like this, and you can have a minority still come up with the music within it, and it will still
Yes,
be part of white culture.
all cultures are no, so see, this is where we're getting into crazy town, because now you're saying that rap culture is white culture simply because
Saying
it's
that. I'm not
American.
saying it like that, dude. Like easy with the straw man, okay? Like you
Okay,
keep
okay.
telling me what I'm saying a
J
lot. You're pulling a, you should listen to your man Jordan Peterson a little better because he knows not to put words in people's mouths. And if you're the
What is
you're
the
the
rule?
you're the
What is the
JP Clips
rule?
guy. You should be alerted of that. But basically, the point is,
That's funny.
like white culture exists, and even if a country was started by white people, that's just a coincidence. Like, I'm not saying, oh, there was some ethno state. Like, I'm not saying, oh, Canada had to only have white people. Like, it just, that's just how it was. It happened to be white people. And then, yes, minorities have kept coming in. That's fine. That's great. Let's have some new people. Different things changed over hundreds of years. And no, I'm not saying, "Oh, white people, like, made rap music," like, I'm not trying to claim that. I'm just saying it came out of this country with this history, and there's a lot of white culture in our history. Now it's changing, and it could change more. We could see more demographic changes, which is all, estimated and probably happening. And then maybe in another 50 years, it could totally change, and you could say, this is a all there's a lot of black culture in this country now, or there's brown culture is the dominant force, and they could change the laws and everything. But right now we're still living with the same constitution, the same major cities and infrastructure that was all set up and built by these original colonists that happen to be white. That's the thing, you got to keep that in mind. It's not like because they're white, it's they happened to be white. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my cat has dementia. You can probably hear in the background
Oh no, it's okay.
screaming. So the thing that I wanna get to is, like, do you agree with me that there are various cultural groups? Do you agree with the idea that, like, religion is a culture, nations are a culture, political parties are a culture, fandoms are a culture? Do you agree with that?
I'd have to think it through. I mean, not necessarily. Like, you just seem like you have a lot of different ideas on culture. Like, you seem a little extreme, and you want to like divide
What?
everyone.
This is
Like,
my jam, man. I love,
you're
social
trying to
psychology,
divide
man. It's
everything.
all about culture.
And I think what the problem with your line of thought is you're just you're just trying to break everything down to the smallest groups, and that means you're focusing on the differences. And I think you
Mhm.
need to look at the
We
similarities for once. because there's actually a lot more similarities than you'll give them credit. Like, for example, I was talking about Europe, and yes, there's a lot of countries in Europe, and France is very different than Britain and Germany and Spain, but they're also very similar. There's a lot of similarities. They all had kings and queens at the same time. They all had, these naval fleets that started colonies across the globe. They all had similar moral codes, similar laws and rules. And yes, you look at it from afar and you're not very familiar or knowing of the history. You see their languages have different letters, but then when you break down, you're like, actually, Spanish and English is pretty close. It's the same characters, it's the same kinds of sentence structure, besides maybe flipping the subject and the predicate and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of similarities there that I think you're trying to ignore to make this whole like no white culture argument.
Well, I just
Like, think
if you
about it
have
like
a
this. They all, like, people in Europe, they look the same. They have similar skin colors, similar eye, hair colors. There's variety, but there's also a lot of similarities, similar bone structure. They all grew that way because Europe was further north and it's a colder area, so it caused them to, form and evolve a certain way. And then in addition, they have like romantic languages. There's like five different languages based off of romantic languages. And then there's, the Germanic and the British languages that all are very similar. Like, yeah, to the uneducated, it might seem like, oh, they're so different. Like Germany and France are like totally different worlds. But I mean, they're not that different if you compare them to like Africa or China or the Middle East.
if the difference if the similarities outweigh the differences, why did the French take our side in the Revolutionary War against the English? That's the French, the white French against fighting and killing the white English.
Well, I think you have this idea. You brought this point up before. It's not as good as you think. Like, just because different groups within a culture are fighting doesn't mean they're
Right,
totally different. They're different
right.
culture. I mean, I brought up to you on Twitter, the Hutus and the Tutsis fought in Rwanda in the 90s, killed each other, massive massacres. And, if you looked at them from afar, though, they look pretty similar. They both live in Africa. They have very dark skin, similar cultures, similar, dress styles. I mean, sure, this tribe might wear a different headband and this tribe might wear different sandals, but like compare the Hutus and the Tutsis to France and Britain. You
The
know what
the
I mean?
difference though is the culture.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is these countries next to each other share a lot of culture. Like, they're so similar, and you're looking past that because you want to break everything down and take everything to the smallest denominator. Like, if I wouldn't have stopped you in your intro, you would have been saying, "Oh, this person has too many eyebrow hairs." We're talking about eyebrow hair culture, and you're talking about teeth,
No,
talking
no.
about people that brush their
No, I
teeth in the
wouldn't.
morning versus
No, I
brush your
wouldn't.
teeth before bed. Like, you're breaking it down way too far, dude. Like, you need to focus on how things are so similar. And then, like I was saying,
I'm gonna add that on. I think vocation is a culture. Like, you have the medical community, which is a culture. You have the
yeah, you
academic
you
community,
think
which is a
everything's a
culture.
culture, but what's funny is you
That's
think
a good
all
one.
these
I
things
like
are a
that.
culture, but not white culture.
Professional.
You have all this
Because,
stuff.
where does white culture fit in here? Like, where are the white meetings? Like, you can point to the Congressional Black Caucus, and you can say that's black culture because you can't get into the Congressional Black Caucus unless you're black.
So
You
you
can,
think there's black culture,
point
but
to the
not white culture.
NAACP, and you can say that's black culture because you can't get into that. You can't get into the
So
NAACP unless you're black.
you are saying that black culture exists, but not white culture.
I'm saying that there are some cultures that have an ethnic component. Like I said, at the ethno-nationalists, you can't get in there unless you're white. They have an ethnic component.
So
I'm saying
black
there
people
there
do have that
are
component.
cultures, but you're saying so there's white people.
Hmm.
That's a big thing. You're saying that the white people is the culture. It's not. The white people is not a culture. Ethno-nationalist.
Like, just don't say that.
So
It's
you're saying,
very simple.
did I so you so you're saying, okay. So tell me what you
So I
are
think I
saying then.
lost the hold on. I think I lost the stream for a second, but it looks like we're back. Let me double check the chat. And my
Mm,
main point is from the beginning, white culture exists. there's a lot of different versions and different parts to it. But I'm not saying you have to be white. Like, there's no exclusive white culture. There's no like, oh, this culture you have to be white. Like, it's not like that at all. I'm just saying it exists. There's many different places that have us and have people in places we've started. And yeah, it's very, very simple. I mean, it's just descendants from Europe. We're descendants from the European nations. That's where most white people come from. You've spread across to other countries, other places. Russia is a part of that, as well as, like I listed, America,
Do
Canada,
do you
Australia. And
do you
each one of those are
understand?
different. I know that they're different. Like America's different than Australia, of course,
Thank
but
God.
but
God
we
bless America.
yeah, but you got to admit there's a lot of similarities.
With them? No. Come
Yeah.
on.
I mean, the biggest similarity is language. Like I was trying to explain language to you. Like
Yeah, they talk funny.
I think you really really underestimate how influential language is on a culture.
No, I don't I don't underestimate that at all.
Okay, so if you
Language
understand
is a
that,
lot.
then you could see that countries that speak English are, descendant or reflecting a part of white people's culture. You might just want to call it British or English to be specific, but that's a white country, and that's the point of today. Is yeah, I'm not trying to be like, oh, this big pro white guy. Like, I don't care about race that much. But if someone comes up to me like you and you're like, white culture doesn't exist, I'm like, I don't know about that, dude. Like, I could see a
Well,
lot
I
of white
you
culture.
still have not you have not explained to me, like, culture is a behavior. It's a set of behaviors. It's a set of narratives, okay? Like Christianity, you can understand as a culture, but it's not it's open to any race whatsoever. So I don't see, like, if we're looking at a culture that's strictly white, what is the ethics of white culture? What is the behavioral package of white culture? What is the book that the white culture reads so they know how to maintain their status in this culture?
Okay,
That
okay.
doesn't make any sense to me.
We could start with language.
Mhm.
So we have
But
English.
whites speak many different languages, though. Russians are white.
Yeah, I know, but dude, there could be more than one. Like, they don't all have to speak the same language.
Right. So then how is it a common culture?
Because, like I was saying before, all those languages, they might look different, but they're actually have very similar structures. They use letters, like they use
Mhm,
romantic languages, they use similar subject and predicate forms in sentences.
mhm.
Like, you can't compare these languages you're talking about, like white people languages. They might look different, they have different letters, but they're all forming sentences and stuff in similar ways. Like, compare it to another culture, like say Asian culture, or specifically like Chinese, Korean, Japanese. Look at their form of language. Like, they draw little pictures for every word. It's
Yeah.
not even close to the European centered languages, which are all, letters put in together to form words. So it's like totally different. You go to Middle East, their language, they have that Sanskrit, and they read
Mhm.
they read from right to left. They have a whole different setup for their pages, and it's just a whole other system. And then the point is, these languages close to Europe, even Russia being a more different one, also part Asian, by the way. But yeah, there's outliers, there's differences, but they don't all have to be the same. That's the thing. You're under the false assumption that everything has to be the same in a culture. It doesn't. Like, there could be multiple versions.
Let me read some super chats, see if anyone has some
Okay.
questions that might uh, just I'm assuming you have super chats on your end too, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, you
At
go.
what percentage of white culture being adopted by non-whites does it cease to be white? Seems like Brooks is arguing to stop being that culture if the majority isn't present anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I don't really it's kind of silly question, but basically, like, we're talking, you want to focus on America. America was built by these European colonists, and it was established that way for hundreds of years. So until that actually changes a lot, it's still a product of this European or white culture, and it comes from them. Like, we have influences like Magna Carta influenced our Constitution. Our Constitution had different laws that updated. And then, yeah, now we have lots of different people coming in from all over, and they're adopting this culture that still came from Europe. And then, yeah, one day, like I talked about before, maybe in another 50 or 100 years, it can morph into this whole other thing, but we're still pretty early on. I mean, we're talking about, diversity and multiculturalism wasn't even a thing in America until like the 60s.
That was Hobo Frodo for $10, by the way. Thank you so much. It's very generous of you. Hobo Frodo also says for $2. Nobody said that in quotation marks. Brooks, after saying that, I think he's talking about you, like talking about white culture. I'm not exactly sure. It's past already. So you want to respond?
I mean, if someone puts words in my mouth, I call them out, and I'm not saying you're the worst at it. Have seen it 100 times, but you're definitely having a lot of false assumptions on your end. So I'm just trying to keep you in check on that.
I don't want to straw man you, man. I honestly don't.
I
I'm
know, and
trying to have a
I
good
don't
faith
think you're trying
conversation with
to.
you.
Like, I believe you don't, and I don't think you're trying to be racist with this take. But I'm trying to
Mhm.
convince you and show you how this is low key anti-white. Because it's like, how
I
hard would it be for you to just say white people have a culture? Like, you're
they
so against
don't
it. You're so
What is
against it.
white what would be so difficult for you to explain to me exactly what you mean by white culture? I don't wanna endorse something that I don't understand. Like, the only white culture I see is the ethno-nationalists, and I fuck those people. I don't wanna throw my lot
That's why
in
you're
with the
so
white
defensive on this
nationalists.
point. It's because
Because first of all, I do not think that it's healthy as a society to be breaking culture down by race. I don't think it's healthy. I think what Christianity did for American culture is awesome. I think one of the reasons we freed the slaves is because they had the slaves adopted the Christian religion, and it was very hard for the whites to look at the slaves and say, "Oh my God, they're the same religion as us." If we actually read the Bible, maybe what we're doing is kind of fucked up. They
I don't
started
know. I don't
empathizing
know.
with them and
Maybe
saying,
I
"These are
think
our
the
culture."
way I see it now that you mention it again is you hang out with a lot of radical leftists and like these very
Radical.
negative, like anti-white racist. So you got to walk on eggshells. Like, you're scared. You're
I'm
scared to
not
say,
scared. I
yeah, I could
believe these
see it.
things,
I
Brooks.
could see
I
it, dude.
believe
Like,
these things.
you've seen these people, like your co-hosts and your other guests are very vicious, very negative people
I
that
fear nothing.
yeah, well,
These are
that's why you're
these are my
being
actual beliefs, okay?
okay. Okay, you have to say that though. I mean, you would say that in this situation like that I'm describing, because the point is you hang out with these people that call people racist all the time. They did it to me. They've done it to other people. They try to frame them up
I
as like white nationalists. Like, that's your guys'
I
favorite
fucking hate
buzzword.
those
All
people.
these nationalists, like, you say it like there's these boogeymen. But the truth
I
is,
hate those people.
yeah, I know, and that's
Those
what
are
I'm saying.
fucking
I see.
SJWs wanna call everybody a racist, okay? I'm gonna get a hard time just on this show that I said I don't believe you're a racist, okay? Those people are going to try to pressure me into calling you a racist. How can you say that I'm bowing to that fucking pressure when I'm saying right here I don't think you're actually a racist? Like, how do
I
those
mean,
2 statements,
I just think the
match
way
up?
that you describe and talk about white people and
I gotta tell you, Brooks, it would be a lot easier to throw my lot in with them and say, "You're a racist." Like, that would be the fucking easy route. Here I am doing the hard thing, like,
okay, I
trying to
appreciate that. I
trying to
appreciate that.
separate
Yeah,
out
yeah.
the
I'll give you that
difference
credit.
here.
I'll give you that credit, man. We're just disagreeing, but I do think there is some fear there because what you're
I'm
saying,
not What am I afraid of, dude? I don't believe you are correct. I think that it is easy for people to tar and feather you as a racist because you're making this argument, uh, not very well. You're not making this argument clear. It's easy to conflate the argument that you're making as you are in favor of white nationalists, because white nationalists are really the only
What?
ethnic culture that white people have.
See, that's the thing, dude. That's why you won't admit it. Because if you know, if you say that white people have a culture, that that is where they take you. They call you a white nationalist for no
No, I
reason.
agree. But do you understand why? I'm saying
No,
very, and
no,
let me make this very clear. They're making a conflation. They're conflating anybody, and they've done this before, even with like you have made the argument before that you are a nationalist, and you're saying that nationalism is a group, and you are white, and therefore that classifies you as a white nationalist, but not a white nationalist, right? That's the argument that you've made.
I don't know what you're talking about anymore. I'm really lost. But
Are you a nationalist? Would
I
you
mean, I love
classify?
my country.
Yeah, okay. I would classify myself as a nationalist too. I fucking love America. I'm a
Yeah,
patriot.
I love this country,
Right.
and I don't hate white people.
Right. Yes.
And
And there
I'm
are
not
people on
crippled.
there
I'm
are
not
social
crippled with
justice
fear.
warriors.
Like I'm not scared of all these radical SJW types that are going to call me a nationalist or a racist, whatever. So I
Right.
am comfortable and strong enough to say, yes, we have a culture. Of course, we have a culture. White
An
people have many
American culture.
cultures.
An American culture.
Right, American
It's
culture
not linked to race.
that happens to be white.
Well, see, that's where you lose me because I cannot, and this is my belief, my this is the way that I feel. Like
Okay. Nathan
I
has a
it
super
feel
chat. He
when
says
you
two
say things like
dollars.
that.
He says,
Okay.
"What of white culture can other races not adopt?" I don't think anyone said they can't adopt anything. I don't think there's any kind of exclusive kind of thing to this. It's just like, okay, for example, let's talk about Wakanda. So we don't have a
What?
yeah, we don't have a proper example of an African country that a lot of people would want to move to. I don't know. You can maybe say that's offensive, but I haven't heard of an amazing place there. But I know Wakanda. I've seen Black Panther, and what I want to point out is, say Wakanda had a lot of immigrants, right? Like a lot of people coming in because it's a great city. I know it can't have immigrants, but at the end of the movie, they started to open it up, right? So Wakanda opens the borders, and a lot of, say, white people, Hispanic people move in. You know, similar to the numbers like immigration that's come to America over the years, right? But
Are
those
you making the
people,
argument that Wakanda is an ethno state? Is that what's going on here?
no, no. I'm just saying, if a lot of other minorities, according to Wakanda, if non-black people moved to Wakanda and started, you know, families there, and they started raising the percentage of non-black people in that country, it wouldn't change the country. It wouldn't change the fact that it was built by black people and it happened to be part of their black culture. You know, it's
Right. It
just,
wouldn't change the history.
yeah, the history, and that's what I'm getting at with America. Like that, just because some minorities came in hundreds of years later, it's not like we've totally changed the place yet. Like it might happen in longer time, but right now it's still the same laws, the same infrastructure, the same cities, the same everything. You know, it's like it's a product of white people. And again, like I'm saying, I'm trying to clarify it because I kind of forget about the whole racist angle. Like I forget that like a lot of people that you know are very race obsessed and like calling everyone racist, like scared of like nationalists or whatever. But
I
if
hate SJWs. I don't hang
yeah,
out with
if
any of
you
these
leave that
people. What are you
behind though,
talking about?
if you just ignore that, like there's no jump there. Like you just tried to make the jump on me. You're like, you do realize that people are going to call you a nationalist after saying this. And it's like, no, actually, I didn't realize that because I wasn't even thinking about it. I'm just saying that white culture exists, and I'm trying to talk some sense into someone who is pushing this anti-white narrative. It doesn't have
How am I
anything to do with nationalism. Like that's what the left wants to do. They want to reframe it and call people racist. So, you know, that's just their game. That's what they do, and that's what your
yeah, for
co-host likes to
politics.
do, and other people that watch your show. Like that's how they operate, and that's why you know better. Like that's why you're so, you know, stifled by fear. Like you can't even say white culture exists.
Because I don't believe white culture exists.
So what? You don't think Britain exists?
I think British culture exists. I think there's a lot of black British people. You see them on TV all the time. They have the accents. Like it's not, it's the
Dude,
culture
you
is
that
not.
is such a low IQ comment right there.
Why?
So you
Why
think
is
because
that
there's
low
a couple
IQ?
black people in Britain, it's not a society
I
that's been created by white people for thousands of years?
Well, I mean, the culture that exists there now, obvious. I mean, if you want to go back into history, you can. And we're talking about like the narrative that established a nation. Like, if you want, I mean, one of the problems that we have with America is that our founding narrative has the unfortunate history of slavery in it, and we're trying to establish an American narrative that black people and white people can both be proud of. I mean, I would argue that that's part of the tension that's going on right now in a lot of
Okay. Okay. So
the
to
Black Lives
me,
Matter stuff.
so that sounds to me like you want to rewrite the history to let in the minorities and make them feel better.
We all want to feel good about our history, our founding narrative. I mean, you're upset. I guess, are you upset that
There you go. There you go.
the, yeah, are you
I can
upset
see
that
you
they
learning. It's like watching like a monkey like pick up a stick and use it as a tool.
did you just call me a monkey?
Yeah, I'm
The
real racist
the
today.
now I lost my train of thought. Anyway, let me read another super chat and we'll see if this the US was built on Judeo-Christian values which evolved into the Enlightenment from that. This is Hobo Frodo again for $20. Oh my God, that's so generous of you. So the US was built on the Judeo-Christian values which evolved into the Enlightenment from that. They're not white and are in fact Middle Eastern and Semitic in origin, merely merely adopted and adopted by those who just happen to be white. So he's making the argument that the culture is separate than the culture is not dependent upon the skin color because any skin color can adopt that culture,
Okay.
right? I mean, that's the purpose of culture.
Yeah, I mean, you like we said about America, like we've had lots of different people come in and they're allowed to come in. No one's denying that. No one's saying that anyone's not allowed or you can't adopt this. The point is that white culture exists and America happened to be founded by white people just like how Canada and Australia and New Zealand did.
Mhm.
And you just want to deny that because you're afraid someone's going to call you racist and you also want to
You
cater
keep
to
saying that.
minorities.
People call me fucking racist every day, and you make it sound like I'm afraid. Come on. Come on, man.
I mean, how hard would it
Why do you
be
keep saying
like
that?
like to say that white culture exists?
Listen, I'm making an argument here. You don't seem to understand the argument that I'm making. Let me try it a different way.
Uh-huh.
Culture is software, okay? Human beings are the biological component of human beings are computers, okay?
Hmm.
The, you can take a computer and run various different software packages on it, right? The culture. You were saying that the computer is the culture. That just because a white computer is running a a black cultural software package on it, that that makes the culture white because of the computer. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Like the
I mean, I don't
culture
know what you're talking
is
about.
distinct.
Honestly, I have no idea what you're saying anymore. Like, I just think you're not gonna get it, and you don't want to get it. And
What is white culture? What are you talking about?
I told you. Have you been listening at all?
What it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. You keep talking about various groups of white people that have cultures that are completely different from one another.
Yeah, those are white cultures.
Okay. And if those cultures do not like here's the argument that I'm making. In order for a culture to be exclusively ethnocentric, that has to be a part of the culture. So if a
Who wants
culture,
a culture like that? Who's
well,
talking about that? Where are you
if
getting
you're
this shit
pinning
from? Like,
if
dude,
you're pinning
it's
the
simple. Europe is a white dominated, like white place where people
how can
came
it be a
from.
white culture? How can it be a white culture if it can if the culture itself will allow anyone who's not white into it? How can it be a white
Because we're
culture?
cool people and we let everyone in.
Okay,
Simple. Like,
right.
why do you think there can't be
So rap
multiple?
music, by
Why do
your
you think
definition, rap music is white culture.
no,
Okay, so rap music isn't white culture,
no? But
but
what I
American
will
culture is
say
white
is
culture.
these countries in Europe have historically been white. They've spread out to other countries and continents and created other nations. And white culture exists because, Britain is a white culture. Do you not think Britain is a white culture?
No.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. That means
Well,
you also
aren't they
don't
willing?
think that
I mean,
Kenyans
you
are a
could make
black
the argument
culture.
that
You-
that Japan is a white culture because Japan doesn't allow other minorities to immigrate. Like, sure, they obviously recognize an ethnic component to their culture.
What?
Japan.
Yeah, I've
Japan
heard of it.
has
I've
an
heard of it.
ethnic component to their culture, right?
So they can be an Asian culture.
Correct. If the culture is unwilling to let other ethnicities into it, then you could say that culture is exclusively because it has a rule in
Dude,
the
what the
culture
fuck is
that is
wrong with
pinned
your
to ethnicity.
brain? What is wrong with your brain? Dude, who said it has to be exclusive? Why do you keep putting all these false limitations on it?
Do
It's
you what
just
let's get to what is your definition of a culture?
I'm
Maybe
not giving
that's where
you a
we're
dictionary definition of a culture, okay? I'm not fucking Webster's, dude. It's
give
just
me your definition of a culture. You're talking about white culture. You got to know I got to know what you mean by culture.
all right, let's look it up. Let's go to the dictionary.
Well, I don't
Culture,
need
the
to look it up.
arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. The customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or social group.
Okay, I'll take that one.
So, people would be European people, and they have customs and traditions and language and, social institutions, achievements,
Can
and
we just call it rules and like
whatever you want
rules?
to call it. But the point is,
So
these
culture is a
cultures,
list of rules.
like, what I don't get is why you are just against white culture.
I why do you keep saying that?
Because you said Asian culture exists, right?
I said that any culture that has an ethnic component to it, you could call a whatever it is culture.
Why do you
If
say
the
that though?
culture because not all cultures have an ethnic component.
Yeah, but
America is
none of
great
that.
because we don't have an
Yeah, but
ethnic
what you're
component.
saying isn't coming from anywhere scientific or rational. Like, this is just from your own
What are you
mind.
talking about? Come on, dude. You
No,
know
I
that
mean,
I'm
no
well
one's
read in
saying
this
that. I'm
stuff.
looking at the definition of culture. I'm looking online at other talks about it. Like, where do you get this from? Who said it has to have a racial component? Who told you that?
You are the one saying it has to have a racial component. Do I have
No,
to argue your side of this as
no, I'm
well?
not.
Okay, so if it doesn't have a racial component, then why are you saying it's white culture? Why is the way that you are framing it part of ethnicity if you're saying it doesn't have an ethnic component to it?
What I'm saying is there's a place in the world called Europe.
Yes,
A lot of
we've
those
gone
places
over this again
there,
and again and again.
they
Many
happen to
different
be white
cultures. Yes,
and they started their own countries and then they went and colonized other places and started other countries and the
right. I
descendants
know.
in the countries that come from that, they're descendants in part of a wider white culture. It doesn't have to be all the same. They don't all have to be speaking the same language. They don't all have to have the same exact tint of skin. It could be a tan country. There could be lighter skin ones up in Iceland or something, you know? Like you're the one putting all these restrictions on it because you're obsessed with not letting white people have a culture.
I wanna understand what
Like
you mean by
just because
culture.
you could point
I'm
out a
not
bunch of
hold on, whites are free to have a culture, like, I don't understand what you mean. If you wanna start your own white culture, go for it.
I don't know who wants to do that. I'm no one said that.
Well, what you're the one arguing that there is a white culture. I don't even think there
There's
I
a
mean, the
lot of
only
white
white culture
cultures. There's a lot of them.
if a culture well, I think my argument is clear. Can I read another super chat? Do you have more super chats?
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
Christopher Keating for 10 euros, it looks like. French and English and other European cultures are definitely different, but there is shared history, linguistic roots, philosophy, religion, and art. Melanin levels are not really the point, though. So he's agreeing with me.
Right. I don't think they're the point either.
Okay, then why are you even making this argument?
They just happen to be white. It's just part of a coincidence.
Okay.
If they all had red hair and we were talking about this, we'd say they just all happen to be gingers or they happen to be blue. You know, we're just saying like the point is like you are worried about someone calling you racist because you're like starting an ethno
You
state.
keep saying that, Kathy Newman. So you're saying you're worried about people
Okay,
calling you
okay,
racist.
that's fair. That's fair. I'll try and stop that. But what I'm saying is, you are looking 2 or 3 steps ahead, trying to make sure that you don't get into this. Oh, I'm a white nationalist now. I don't care about that. I don't care if
You
people
the
call me
argument you're
names.
making is ridiculous, okay?
All right, I got a super chat. It says PSA Sitch wants someone wants him to debate Mark Collette or Adam Green. Make it happen. Docs, thank you first. Thank you Nathan and Mestizo. Thank you Doc, who says black people in England are like 3 people. I'm sure it's more than that, but it is a small percent. Nathan then again says compare and contrast European and white culture. Uh, yeah, that's actually the last point's not a bad question, but I think the point is, like I said, I repeat it again: white culture exists. Mainly, its descendants or people from Europe. There can be different versions. There could be different differences. They don't all have to be the same. And then to the next point is, I'm not sure how you can explain the fact that only white culture is not allowed to exist. Like, do you think black culture exists?
Well, I know exactly why people freak out about ethno-nationalists. I know exactly why. I have
Because
my
they're lame dumbasses who are obsessed with hating white people?
no, because they have a majority. They can do whatever they want at the ballot box.
White
Obviously, you'd be more
nationalists?
afraid. Like, peop
White
minorities are
nationalists are.
afraid of white nationalists for the same exact reason you are afraid of a black majority. It sucks to be in the minority.
I'm not afraid of that.
You're not afraid of a black majority?
No, I don't care.
Okay,
I'll be
that's
happy.
good.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm
I
not
will be
obsessed with
happy.
demographics. I don't really care. It's just that's just the way it is. Like I'm not here
What
to
if that
argue.
what if that black majority is obsessed with race and they're anti-whites and they're racist against us? That could suck, man.
Yeah, that's bad. I mean, I wouldn't want
Yeah, that's terrible.
I don't like people that are racist, and that's why I'm arguing against this whole thing of like white people have a culture and people that say they don't are racist against us.
We all
That's
know
you.
you're we all know you're a a wannabe goth. We all know you're wannabe goth, Brooks. We all know that you wear eye makeup when you're by yourself.
I don't know where you're getting this from, man.
I'm
You're
just
losing
playing
me.
with you.
You're losing me.
Brian,
Um,
go ahead. You
so
got another
here,
super chat?
do you think that black culture exists?
Well, not really. I mean, it depends upon what the culture is. Like
So
what
no.
culture are you talking about?
Do you
No,
th-
yeah.
no? Okay. So do you think Asian culture exists?
Asian culture.
You kind of said you did
I
before. Do you want to stand behind that or?
Well, I mean, like I said, we're veering off into areas that I'm not really well read in. So I mean, I would say, yeah, there's an Asian culture, but I'm only seeing it from the outside.
Right. So you're allowing certain ones, but you're more likely to be against a white culture. That's what it seems
I,
like. And I think
I
with
am in a
Asian,
specific. I'm not against if there's a nation that's just white people and they want their immigration just to reflect that. I'm not. Who am I to say that they're incorrect? I don't think pinning your. I
so
think it
what
hurts you
that's where
to
you get
pin
the
your
that's
neck.
where you get the you're doing that thing again where you say a country has to be only a certain race to have that culture. Who told you that had to be the case?
Let me make this very clear here. I am defining culture as a set of behavioral rules that a group of people adopts. And if that culture adopts a rule, no people with different skin color than us, then I would classify that culture as an ethnocentric culture.
Okay.
Now,
I
does
think
is
Ian
that
has a good
clear?
comment here. He says saying white people have a culture is not the same as there being a white culture. And I think that's what I'm trying to get across too. Like that's what we're
Okay.
kind of debating and like I think that's why I was trying to get back like a lot of this is semantics. Like I think if we could just get the terminology down, we might even end up on the same page. I don't know though. I mean, we've already done almost an hour and I'm not seeing any progress, but I that's what I'm trying to say here is white people can have a culture. That doesn't mean there's a white culture and we're all the same. It doesn't. No one said, "Oh, and then what you're saying doesn't make sense either because you act like a country has to say, "Oh, we're only white and we're only letting white people in," and that's the only way you'll let them have a white culture. And it's just like, why are you being so specific? It's like you're being so specific because you know you're never going to find a case for that.
Do you understand my argument? Can you steel man my argument?
No, no.
Okay.
I think your argument comes from emotion, and it comes from like a place of you just being wrapped up in this like left wing. Like
I think your argument comes from emotion.
you've had too many bad
It comes
people in
from
your
people
ear.
being racist against you.
So you think me trying to say there's a white culture is because people are racist against white people?
That's what I believe, yeah.
So what would your suggestion be? Like just admitting that there's no white culture and letting them.
Just get over it. There's gonna be racists in the world. Fuck those people.
Yeah, well, I think my side has a better argument to say that actually because all I'm trying to say is there's white cultures out there and you're trying to deny they exist.
I am not. Listen, steel
Like
man my argument. If we can walk away and you at least understand my argument, I'll call that a victory.
okay, if I steal man your argument, it would be you don't want to admit there's a broader
No, 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 no.
like
Don't start it that
basically
way.
you
Come
want to
on,
go you want
make
to
my
point
actual argument. My argument, I would not say, I don't want to admit like that. My argument does not start with, I don't want to admit. Come on.
okay,
Come
okay.
on, Brooks. You're not even trying here.
Um culture is more specific and it needs to be defined in a very
No, no, no.
narrow way.
Let me say it. You can just repeat it after me, okay? Culture is a set of rules.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Do you understand that part of the argument? Culture is like a set of rules, a package, a behavioral package. Like some cultures have the behavioral norm of Christmas. Other cultures have the behavioral norm of Hanukkah. Okay, they have different rule sets. A culture is a rule set.
Okay.
Are okay. I'll say the whole thing. You can steel man my
I'm
argument.
out, dude. I'm checking out. I don't have time for this. Like we've done an hour. You're not
Okay,
going.
you got to go.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. I mean,
No, I'm. This is my argument. I
it's
think other
pretty
people can
obvious
understand the
that
argument.
there's white cultures out there. Like there's white people. We have different cultures. I don't know why you want to deny that so hard. That's the thing I don't
I'm
get.
not denying it. I
Like
am not denying it.
there's no rule that says all cultures have to be the same. There's no rule that says your country cannot let
There
in
is a rule.
other
Cultures have to be
races.
different.
Like cultures can be different. Like there can be multiple white cultures, there can be multiple black cultures, there can be
That fits in exactly with what my thing. How does it not?
yeah, but you won't say there can be multiple white cultures.
There can be multiple cultures comprised of white people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just don't want to
Okay,
that you just don't want to take it like you just have a opposition to the
but
idea.
it is not a white culture until they adopt a rule that says white people only.
That's according to you.
That's my argument.
Yeah,
Yes.
but that's not a rule, that's not a definition,
Right.
that's not something you can prove. That's just your opinion on it.
Well, the argument you're making is your opinion too.
No, mine is
We have
fact
a difference
based.
of opinion.
Mine is
Yeah,
fact
mine is
based.
fact-based too.
No, it's
So
not.
we're
There's no
choosing
rule.
different facts.
No, there's no rule that says a nation has to what you just said.
Some nations do have that rule though. We talked about Japan.
Okay. But that doesn't mean everyone has to have that specific rule. Like you're just trying to rule out a lot of white cultures with this specific rule.
Well, if it's a what you're calling a white culture that allows other people to participate,
Hmm.
like Hobo Frodo said, how many black people have to participate in the culture? Like, does the culture become fully black now and then it's still white culture? Is white culture the system or is it the people?
Dude, I just think there's a lot of cultures out there. Some of them happen to be white. White people deserve a right to exist, and we should be
No
able
doubt.
to have a culture and not have people attack us and say, "Hey, you don't matter. Like you're not a thing. Like you don't exist. Like everyone else is cool, like but not white people." That's the thing that I'm against. And that's what you're supporting. Not specifically
I'm
not
not
not in the most extreme ways, but
I
the
am not supporting racism against white people. I think it's fucking abhorrent.
then
Like,
why
listen
can't
to our show on Sunday.
then why can't you admit that there's some white cultures out there? Like would that really kill you?
We're arguing over definitions here,
Yeah, it's
Brooks. And
semantics and it's like
until you can steel man my argument, I don't know that you even understand my argument.
you don't
I think
have an
everybody
argument. Your argument is white people can't have a culture. That's it.
I have made my argument. I feel very clearly to most people, Brooks.
Yeah, what? Oh, your chat is on board with you. Oh, you got a bunch of people in the chat
I'm
agreeing
just
with you. Good job, Adam.
I
You
am not
garnered
reading the
up some
chat. I'm
people
just
from
reading the super
Twitter.
chats.
Congratulations. You got other anti-white people to agree with you. Oh, wow, I've never seen that before. Dude,
Why are you calling people anti-white, man? That's not even cool.
cuz you're not letting us have a culture. You won't even admit it exists.
If you want to start a culture that has a rule, only white people, I'm go for it, okay? No one's stopping you
What the fuck does that mean? Why would you say that? What is
because
wrong with your brain? Like where do you get this idea? I'm serious. Like what are you thinking?
I
Why would
this
you have
is
to why would you tell me that like implying that's what I want? I don't want that. I've never said
okay,
that.
you don't want that.
Yeah, no. And then
Okay.
and then also you're using a false
Do you want to
definition.
maintain
This is not
so
the
but
definition of culture. You're making up your own definition.
I'm no, I
Yeah,
we
you
read the
are. We
definition.
read the
You read the
definition of
dictionary
culture.
definition and I agreed
We
with it.
read the definition and it said nothing about having a specific race.
Exactly. That's my argument. Yes, that's my argument. You're the one making an argument that culture in order for you're I'm unclear because
All I'm
if
saying is white culture exists. Some cultures happen to be white. It's not because, oh, we want to be white or only can be white or you can't let in other people. That's your bullshit.
okay,
That's your shit you're making up.
we're having a disagreement over definitions.
Yeah,
You're saying that a culture that
it
the
can happen to
entire
be white.
population of or is it just the majority? A culture that's majority white, you're saying is a white culture. Isn't that insulting to the minority population of that culture? If you're saying if you're telling, the Black community that you are participating in a white culture, that the culture is white. Isn't it
I
less
don't know.
offensive to say that it's an American culture?
I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other talk. I mean, it doesn't really have to do with our discussion. If people are offended by something, that's a whole other thing. Like, I don't know. If they're offended, okay, we could talk about it. But what does that have to do with the fact that America happened to be built by white people?
Well,
If they're offended by it,
a
I
lot of
mean, that's all right. I mean, that sucks. I don't want anyone to have their feelings hurt, but how does that have changed the history? Like, why do you bring this up? Like, you're bringing up this emotional argument. Like, oh, what if these people's feelings are hurt? What are you gonna
well,
do, Brooks?
uh,
Why does that
ultimately, I think
matter?
we well, ultimately, I think we all have to get along, so I think that's
Well, I
important.
think you'd get along with people better if you stop saying white people don't have a culture. Don't you think? Don't you think if I said went around saying black people don't have a culture, they might get upset about it? Like, at least just let it go. Like, I mean, do you have to keep saying it? Like, do you have to bring it up? Like, you guys bring me on your stream and like Sitch is laughing about it. You guys are calling me racist. You're like, oh, white people don't have culture. You guys aren't even a fucking thing. Fuck you guys.
Well, I there
That's
are
you, man.
many
That's what you're
cultures. There are
defending
many
right now.
cultures.
That's what you're defending right now.
There are many cultures that are comprised of white people. I don't think of them as white culture. So, and I think white people would disagree over what white culture is. So it's difficult for me to say, just because people are white and participate in a culture that it's white culture. I mean, I wouldn't call Christianity white culture, even though Christianity is probably predominantly white.
I think you have it like in your head, like the phrase white culture is like a swear word to you.
Mhm.
Because it seems like you're very
No,
against
I'm
saying it
I'm
or
just
acknowledging it.
I'm just trying to understand what you mean by it. That's all I'm trying to understand.
I mean,
Like, I
it's
don't I
simple.
don't
Like,
think it's a
you
swear
do
word or
understand where Europe is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know
Okay.
British culture, I know French culture, I know, Russian culture, all those are white people, they're all
They
different
happen to be
cultures.
white. So those are
Right.
white cultures.
So they're all white cultures. You're saying Russian culture is white culture. You are saying, like I have my hierarchy here, you're saying humans are top, then there is religions, then we have racial categories like uh I would call it national categories, but you'd probably call it racial categories like Russian, French, English. I mean, it gets difficult when you come up with an American because American's not really an ethnicity. One of the things I think is great about America is that we're not pinned to ethnicity, but you want to pin it to an ethnicity, right? I mean, or do you?
Not really. I mean, I'm
Okay, so
fine
you're
with
happy with that.
multicultural. I'm fine with different people. Like, but I'm just recognizing the history that it was built by a certain group of people. That's a coincidence.
Yeah.
You could say it's a coincidence. I would say it's part of the foundation, but it's not. It doesn't mean it's only white people or it's only you can't have this. Like, there's no limitation. Like, it's just like a city happened to be built by this kind of people, and then over time other people moved in and it changed over time, and it might not be that anymore, but it's still a product of that. We're still living in the aftermath and history of that. I'm not saying everything's white culture. Like, I don't really care. I'm not like this big pro white guy. I'm just saying our culture exists. There's white culture out there, and it's
Well, I
not
don't
that
like when
hard to
people are
see.
racist against whites. I don't like racism.
Yeah, well, it's like it's pretty simple, Adam. It's just there's different cultures. Like, you're just obsessed with trying to like, I don't know. Like, you say that French is a culture. There's a lot of different people in France, right? Like, there's a lot of different states, there's a lot of different dialects. Like, Britain
Yeah.
has different things. There's the Scottish and the Irish, and there's all these different voices. Like, they're very different. Like, the way you break it down, you could break down everything, and there's basically no cultures besides like small family units. I mean, you could just keep going down and down. We're
Well,
talking.
that's what I began this conversation with. There are nested levels of culture.
Okay. And one of those
Yeah,
part components on the higher level is the area where your descendants are from.
right. History.
History. And the history of a lot of these countries happens to be white. You know, it happens to be, and again, like I was saying before, white is just a term that a lot of people use. Like in America, you're not necessarily talking about a vague white color. You're talking about whichever original Americans immigrated from Europe, from the ones that come from Britain and whichever Germany, France, whichever it was, all those different places. And yeah, white is just a go to word. And it's the same kind of thing from what I've heard in Europe. Like Europe, they're not always saying, oh, I'm British, I'm French. They're just saying, oh, we're white, we're European. That's just a go to phrase. And I think the only reason people get hung up on it is because of anti-white racism, and there's all this talk about nationalism and talking about this thing, and it's like you just can't even defend yourself if you're white.
I have a ton of super chats to read. Do you want to stick around for them, or you can bolt if you want? I feel like some of them might be asking questions of you. So
I mean, I just got one. It says, do either of you think white culture is immoral? When I lived in New Hampshire, most of the people were white there, but they all believed in a white culture. Compare and contrast European and white culture. Some good thoughts. I mean, honestly, I think the points are all made. I don't think you're going to change your mind or admit that white people have cultures. So I think that's it.
well, I do think, like, in places that are predominantly white and they don't want minorities to move in, I mean, that still fits in with what I'm saying about the argument of there being an ethnic component to their culture. I don't deny that people are ethnocentric, let's call them, not necessarily. I think racist is obviously a loaded term, but there are people who feel more comfortable being around people that look like them. Feel very uncomfortable about being around people who don't look like them. But I think most of that is a cultural component. I think if a black person moved into a Massachusetts and they shared the same culture, they dress the same, they talk the same, they look the same, I think people would not even compare them, not even think of them as black or Hispanic or whatever they were, because the culture is the important thing.
Okay. So white culture doesn't exist.
Uh, okay, we're just if I
I'm just saying, I mean, nothing's changed for you. You don't want to give us any
white
credit.
culture, the only example, like, it's so difficult because you're narrowing down. I am saying that white culture exists, and every time I give you my definition of white culture existing, you get pissed off at me because you think that I'm trying to call you a white nationalist or an ethno nationalist. Okay, I have a understanding of culture that if culture is pinned to ethnicity, if ethnicity is one rule in the culture, the rule is nobody that's a different ethnicity is allowed. Okay. If that is a rule inside the culture, then you can say that that culture is a blank culture, a white culture, a Asian Japanese culture, a whatever culture it is that is like us only. If you have an ethnocentric culture, then I would classify that as a white culture. Now you're saying to me, you're saying that white culture doesn't exist. I'm saying no, white culture does exist. It's the fucking ethno nationalists. Okay.
So
That's
you
the
do
white
think it
culture.
exists.
Yeah. Ethno nationalists are a white
All
culture.
right, then I
Yes.
win.
Okay. So are you an ethno nationalist? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
I
So
was just saying that
you're saying that
white culture
that a white
exists.
culture exists, but you are not a part of that white culture. Are you defending that white culture?
I'm not saying anything other than it exists, and you just admit it
Okay.
exists.
It does exist. Like, who
So
you'd have to
that
be
means I
like, who
win.
doesn't think it doesn't exist?
You were saying that at the beginning. We've been talking for an hour.
Right.
Now you said it exists.
Yes.
So I win.
I said that in the very beginning.
So will you say that Brooks, you
You're a
won?
winner. You're a winner.
I
I
won.
know.
All right, that's fine. Okay.
Obviously Adam has destroyed Brooks here.
No, you
We'll let
lost,
the
dude. You said it. They
we'll let the
exist.
we'll let the we'll let the comment we'll let the
You
The
care too
comments
much about
below
what people
decide
think,
who.
man. You care too much. You're like, "Oh, the comments are on my side. Let's see what the comments say."
Well,
Fuck
this is
them.
how culture works. This is how
No,
culture
no,
works.
it's not. You have a very poor understanding of culture.
Mhm.
What's your
Okay.
education?
My education?
Yeah,
Grade school.
grade
I
school.
dropped out in the 7th grade. No, I'm
Nuh-uh.
talking smack. I have a college degree.
Okay.
Uh, I studied art. I don't suggest it. It's, pretty useless.
Have you ever lived
Well,
outside of California?
yeah, I lived in New Orleans.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I lived in the South. Yeah, very, very different environment, cultural shock. I was
So
a, I was one of 3 white kids in an all-black Catholic school in, Southern California.
so you're an art major living in California who admits that white culture exists. Is
E
that fair?
Ethno-nationalist culture exists, yes. I'm not a member of it. I don't,
So you
sit
already admitted that white culture exists. Are you backpedaling?
I do you understand what I'm saying, Brooks?
I'm just asking a simple question. You said it exists before. Are you
Yes.
changing that?
White 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 culture as the ethno-nationalist culture exists. I'm not gonna say
Okay, white
Christianity
culture
is white culture.
exists. I
I'm not gonna
win.
say America is white culture.
I
America's
win.
not a white culture.
Um, your art degree didn't do you too well today because you've
What's
lost
your
the
degree in,
debate.
Brooks?
Me?
Yeah,
I studied film and telecommunications.
nice.
Yeah, I have multiple degrees from a top school in Florida.
So can I read the rest of the super chats? Are you gonna stick around or are you gonna bolt?
Uh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's do it up. Let's see. There's gotta be some on your side, I'm telling you. Brian K for 4.99. White doesn't amount to any cultural substance. It's a mere biological condition across many cultures, like he said about eyebrow culture.
Well, there
Yeah,
is
there's no
something worth
eyebrow
pointing
culture.
out. I mean, the top countries to live in the world all happen to be white. I mean, I don't
Mm.
know how you want to take that. The safest countries in the world, the most desirable places, they're not in Africa.
It's because of the institutions, though. It's not because of the skin color of the people.
If you say so, man. If you say so. I mean, I'm not saying it's just. I'm just saying they happen to be white, and I'm saying a lot of our descendants built great countries.
Hobo Frodo for $5. Message retracted. Oh, must have changed his mind. Hobo Frodo for $5. Brooks, describe the negatives of white culture and how they are identifiably exclusive from other cultures. What do white people do horribly wrong?
White people are self-hating. They buy into white guilt, and they do stuff like say there's no white culture.
Air guitar, I think, is also something that annoys me. So, uh, Ek, Ek ECK, Cones or EC Cones for 4.99 says, "An organization called White Men as Full Diversity Partners," which pro-diversity, by the way, claims that white male is in fact a cultural identity. What the fuck? How do you feel about that, Brooks?
I mean, anyone that says we have a culture, I guess I'll try and get behind. Got all these
Oh my god,
anti-white people
come
things.
on. Brooks, you know that's SJW as can be. Come on, white men as full diversity partners? Come on.
I mean, at least they admit we have a culture.
That's fucking SJW as can be. What's the takeaway for $5 says, "Have either of you heard the honor culture versus dignity culture?" Yes, I have. Seems like a distinction that would serve this combo well. Yeah, probably so, but Brooks, have you studied up on honor culture versus dignity culture? Can you tell us the difference?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, we'll
Sounds
save that for
boring.
next time. Yeah, science, boring. Negro, Nars for €2.29 says Ethno National is dead. Ethno International. Okay. Do you know what that means? I
No.
don't. Kevin Dugan for 4.99. The Judeo-Christian was invented in the 70s by the long-nosed tribe. I think that might be, is that anti-Semitic? I don't know.
Sounds like it.
Okay. That's so weird. Long. Matthew Van Skoke for $5 says, let's say Brooks is right. What is the usefulness of the term and holding it as an idea? What is the usefulness of this white culture that you speak of?
I mean, we landed on the moon. We invented the internet and the iPhone and all kinds of cool stuff. Created some of the best countries in the world. I think it's
Mhm.
pretty useful. If you like
Ease
science, I mean, if you like science and technology and, you know,
You just
cr-
called science boring.
yeah, it's boring. It's boring to talk about, but it's definitely useful. I mean, we're using these computers to stream across the country right now.
EC Cones for 4.99 says, "Can a white person join or be a part of Black or Asian culture? And if so, is it still a Black or Asian culture?" That's my big question.
Yeah.
Is it still? So
Yeah, if a
a
black
white
person
person
moves to
join.
Tokyo, that doesn't make Tokyo not a Japanese culture.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's what you were trying to say earlier. Like, if some minorities move to Mexico, that doesn't mean they're not a Hispanic culture. Like, just because there's like white people there.
Yeah, but a lot of cultures move and they form like Chinatown or Koreatown or
Sure.
I don't know. Is there a Russia town? I don't know. Greg Oots for $2 says, "At this point, Brooks has straw man Adam Moore." Well, that's good, as long as we know who's winning the straw manning. Brian K for 4.99 says, "White culture does not exist. There are white cultures. What is common among them is they are dominantly white people. Between people, it's not white." Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like French culture and, English culture may be predominantly white, but they're not white culture.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we just have different ideas about that term. And
Culture or
obviously,
what?
it's got like this stigma to people like you. Like, I never realized it was this bad because I just hear it and I'm just like, I know white people, like, I don't have anything against white people. Like, I've lived with them my whole life in my country. You apparently have lived with more minorities. So I think that has influenced you to kind of be against yourself.
I'm not against myself. What are you talking about? Like,
Okay.
I don't empathize with people based on the color of their skin. I empathize with them based on their culture.
Okay.
The,
You say so.
Alex Castle for 4.99 says, "Brooks, rap is part of American culture. Brooks, America is part of white culture. Brooks, rap is not part of white culture." Yeah, see, that is a inconsistency in your argument.
Not really.
Alex Castle,
No, it's
sorry.
not.
It is,
You
it
just
totally
think you
is.
have this cute point, but you don't.
Well, we're super hyper rationalists around here. You know, we're the big brain centrists. We're calculating. We look very much for like
No,
the
no.
the
Being a centrist doesn't make you smarter. It just means you're a fence sitter who's too weak to take a strong stance on things.
I take a strong stance on all my positions. Are you kidding me? What are you
Name
talking
one.
about?
Name one controversial position.
I'm pro-choice. I am, pro-gun.
Those aren't controversial. That's just
Those aren't
that's
controversial.
classic American
Abortion
stances.
abortion isn't controversial.
I
Oh,
mean, it
good.
is
Glad to
for
hear that.
your liberal friends, maybe. I mean, no one I know is like that. I mean,
It is for your conservative friends too. Are you kidding me? Come on.
no,
I'm a baby killer.
we just don't want to kill babies, and we want to have a Second
Yeah.
Amendment. It's not like
Yeah.
controversial.
What about if you kill a baby with a gun though? Okay.
That's
Too
murder.
far. Bobby B for $5. Far left SJW types are trying to deconstruct whiteness, white American culture. Brooks is just standing up for the culture white Americans created. Okay. I the thing that I believe the SJWs, well, I'll let you respond first, Brooks. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a pretty fair comment. I think, there's definitely, now that I'm realizing how where I am, I know you guys, like, on your side, you're very apt to, like, misconstrue white people as racist and nationalists, which you attempted to do earlier in the stream. But whenever you just let that go, like, I don't care about that stuff. And yeah, this comment you just read, it sounded right, even though some people will take those words, like if you say white the wrong way, you're all of a sudden in the Klan or something stupid. It's not like that at all. It's just, we're just sick of people being anti-white, and we're standing up for ourselves. And part of that is, getting others to acknowledge the fact that our culture exists.
Yeah, I this is why I hate SJWs, because SJWs are fucking racist. Like, this is exactly what bothers me. This whole idea that academia is trying to deconstruct whiteness. What they're actually doing is they're saying that white people is a fucking culture, and they're saying that that culture is like, they have this complete straw man of white culture that they put up. We're colonialists, we're oppressors, we're dominators. Like, that's their narrative. It's the same exact thing when racists on the other side want to lump all black people into a black culture and say that that black culture is prone towards criminality. They have low IQ, that kind of thing. So the SJWs are just as fucking bad as the ethno nationalists.
Yeah, but I
And
don't
that's
ever I
that
don't
bugs.
ever see any of those nationalists. Like, I always see SJWs and leftists all over the media and stuff taking over. I don't see any of that.
Yeah, a bunch of racists are taking over the media. It's
Yeah.
sound the alarms. It's awful.
Yeah, and it's the liberals.
Yeah, liberal racists. Yes, left-wing racists. Yeah, there's racists on both sides. Uh, no Nosferatu, Zod for 4.99. Adam, sounds like you're saying, culture needs to be segregated. Well, segregating culture naturally segregates itself. Yes.
No, I
The
think they're
the
saying you're
key is
sounding a little pro segregation, like the way you make these absolutist statements, like, oh,
well,
it
what
has
are you
to be
talking
all this race in order to be this kind of culture. It has to be all of this to be this. Like, you're kind
No,
of you're
I
kind
said
of
at the
thinking
very
of things
beginning,
in like a
nested
simpleton
hierarchy.
way.
No,
Like,
no, no, I said in the very beginning that there are nested hierarchies. You can't have a nested hierarchy and then be segregated. Segregation is, there's this over here and this over here. When you have a Christian culture that, has a smaller culture, like maybe a Christian sect in it. There's Christianity here and there's Catholics here. You can't segregate Catholics from Christians because they're nested hierarchies.
okay, but then in the same sense, like according to your logic, there wouldn't be an American culture either.
There is an American culture. How
But
is there
what
not?
but I mean, Florida is different than California.
Sure, there's different state cultures nested within American culture.
So how
All of
come that
these
doesn't apply to
nested
Europe?
within human culture.
So how come
What's
that
that?
doesn't apply to Europe?
What do you mean, how come it doesn't apply to Europe? It does.
So there's a European culture.
Sure, yeah, totally.
Okay. And
The
then
EU is trying to form a European culture. They are, yes.
okay.
Totally.
And then if I told you that some people call that white culture, like they call American culture white culture, would that throw you off? Would you not believe that? Like, that some people call Americans white people, right?
Yeah.
And they
Sure,
call
okay.
Europeans that. So, I mean, really, you're saying the same thing. You just won't use that same word. Like, you know, you won't say it's American culture is a white culture. You
American culture is not a white culture. I mean, it's predominantly, white, but what is white culture?
I mean, we're
You
not
keep,
speaking
punting on what
Chinese.
white culture is.
We're not speaking Chinese.
Yeah,
We're not
Chinese
riding, we're
culture.
not wearing like, tribal gear like the natives wore.
Drew Welty for $1.99 says, "Adam, traditional masculinity is a culture." Sure, yeah.
Yeah, someone
Traditional
says it's not going
masculinity
anywhere
culture.
because there's no pure racial cultures anymore. And I think that's the problem is you're taking
No,
it to
that's a
these.
good thing.
No, it's not a problem. Like, I don't care if the things are changing. I'm just saying the problem with you is you're trying to make things so absolutist and like, oh, it has to be all one race and one culture. And that's just not
I'm
the
not an
case.
absolute. No, I'm not
Things
absolutist.
are like more nuanced. Like you're not getting the whole thing. Like you can't really think past the first layer. You're just kind of blinded by the light.
Yeah, I love the way you debate, Brooks.
So I got a
Yeah, I
chat that
know you're
says,
confused. I know you're confused right now, Brooks. I know this is all very confusing for you. You feel like a fog of misunderstanding. A lot of words are flying by you that you don't necessarily understand. You would need to look them up in order to know the words, understand the argument that I'm making here, but
"What
we
words?
don't have time for that.
What
I'm
words?
just saying that I don't like that argument style, Brooks. I'm doing what you're doing to me back to you.
What?"
The whole year, I know you're very confused about all this stuff. I know all this is very confusing, that you don't really understand things. I
Okay,
think I
yeah.
understand the
I
argument.
mean, yeah, I said that to you, but so you don't have any words that I misunderstood. You're just saying that as a joke.
Yeah, totally, I was joking.
Okay, okay, yeah. Well,
Are
I
we on
mean,
are we on good terms now, or are you gonna, like am I gonna get a DM 3 days from now saying, "Fuck you"?
no, I mean, I'll let it go from here. But you're still, you lost the debate. You admitted that white people have a culture.
I admitted that ethno-nationalists have a culture, that white ethno-nationalists have a culture.
Okay,
That's the white culture that I'm admitting to, just so
yeah.
that's clear.
Well, okay. That's then you just walked it back a little bit, but you're still
Well, not
admitting
really,
it,
I was clear
and we
about
just
that.
gotta. Now all we gotta do is get you to admit there's more white cultures, like Britain, France.
Right. I wouldn't classify Britain as a white culture, but
Yeah, and it's just now we're just talking semantics again. It's over. I won. You admitted that there's a white culture. So
are
that's
you on
it.
camera over there? Turn your camera on, I wanna see your victory dance.
No, no, I'm not on camera, but I am pretty happy about it. And I'm also a little bummed because I got to get back to work. So I'm going to have to let you go. It's
Alright.
been real. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the super chats. Last one's from Doc. They said, "Do you know that the best states in the US are mostly white and black culture are poor because they need white people to help them?" Do you
Oh,
know that
okay.
the best states are white?
I did not know that, no, I don't I'm not an expert on the demographic makeup of the United States, so
But you
I
recognize
don't
the
know
top
that there
countries in the world happen to be that race, right?
I do know that Alabama is the poorest union of the state, that Louisiana is oh, no, it's Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I actually lived in Louisiana, and there is a large black population there, but there's also a large white population there. And Alabama, I mean, the white people are poor and the black people are poor. So I don't know what he's saying.
Okay, we'll call it there. Thanks for coming in, guys. We're going to wrap it up. Everyone have a great day. Let's not be negative Nancy's. Let's not attack each other and
Yeah,
say
let's
other
not do that.
people's cultures don't exist. Let's just let everyone have a culture. No need to be negative Nancy's and say, oh, you don't have a culture. You don't exist. Let's just all be happy people and have a good day and not let this bring us down.
Word. Take care, man.